Applying what we just learned about parallel lines and transversal, we're going to identify the locations and name them. So this is just your practice knowing corresponding, alternate interior, which means inside and crossing the transversal. Alternate exterior means outside but crossing the transversal. And consecutive interior means inside but on the same side. So consecutive is going to be same. Alternate is going to be opposite side of the transversal. And hopefully exterior and interior are pretty self-explanatory by this point. So if I'm looking at number 1, I have Y and X. They're not both on the inside, they're not both on the outside, but if I did cut this guy in half right here and lay them on top of each other, Y would touch or sit on top of X. So these are corresponding angles. Number 2, I have Y and X. They are both on the outside. So take a moment and see if you can think of what it is. Because again, as I always tell you, this is the time to mess up, not on the quiz or at the end of the lesson, but now. So they are alternating along the transversal. They are on the outside of those parallel lines. So relative to our first set of notes, it's on the outside. So out here. So we know it's an exterior. So these are going to be alternate exterior. And we know alternate exterior are congruent. Also corresponding are congruent. That squiggle with the equal is congruent. So looking at number 3, much like number 1, if I cut this guy in half, because they're not both inside, they're not both outside, so those two choices are off the table. If I cut it in half along and then sit this guy on top of this guy, they would touch. So these are going to be our corresponding. And we know corresponding angles are congruent, which is notated by your squiggle over your equal marks. Number 4, Y and X are both on the inside. Both on the inside. And they're on the same side. So they're not alternating. So they're consecutive interior. Otherwise known as same side interior. Consecutive and same side interior. It's just a difference in teachers or how they choose to use the words, but they both mean the same thing. And these, remember, are not congruent. They're supplementary, which means their sum equals 180 degrees. Okay, number 5. So if we're looking at our transversal, it's on either side. It's also on the inside of the parallel lines. So that means it's going to alternate. And they're on the interior. So interior angles. And that means that they are congruent. Alternate interior angles are congruent. Looking at number 6, like I said, take a minute, pause the video, give it a good go, see if you can make a good educated guess. They're on the outside, so exterior. So we know we can just, at this point, we know it's exterior. And then they alternate along that transversal. So transversal, it's on either side. So alternate exterior. And alternate exterior angles we know are congruent. Number 7, so this looks wild. Looks super wild. So you have to find your parallel lines in your transversal. So if I actually look at this line, it's parallel to this line. And then I focus on this transversal. There's a lot of extra stuff going on, but I have a transversal and 2 parallel lines. Both of these are on the inside between the 2 parallel lines. And then it looks like they alternate along the transversal. So that's why I'm a big fan of highlighters, because once you highlight and locate what you're looking at, maybe it'll help it close down for you a little bit, not be so overwhelming with all the lines. So it's interior, and they alternate along the transversal, so alternate interior angles. And we know that those are congruent. Looking at number 8. So again, I'm looking at this parallel line And this parallel line, my transversal, because they're along this line, and you're just looking at where your X and Y are. And that means I have an angle here and an angle here, which means they are on the exterior of my parallel lines. And they do alternate along the transversal. So that's going to be alternate exterior angles. And alternate exterior angles, again, are congruent. That means they're going to have the same value. All right, looking at number 9. So I know these two are my parallel lines, and it's inside. This is my transversal. My two angles are on the same side. So it's consecutive interior angles. Consecutive interior angles. Same side interior. So consecutive, otherwise known as same side interior, because they're inside the two parallel lines. And those are not congruent. They are supplementary, which means their sum equals 180. Number 10. We have a lot of lines again. So this angle is using this line, and this angle is using this line. So we have two parallel lines cut by a transversal. And our angles here and here. So they're not both inside. They're not both outside. So that means these are going to be corresponding. Because this is when, if we cut it down the middle and picked it up, this guy would sit on top of this guy. Corresponding angles, which means they are congruent. All right, guys, we're going to work the last couple in a different video. So hang in there. You're getting it. So I'll add some numbers.